Hello, everyone. Welcome to Offering Sympathy. My name is Charles Theodore Monk, and I will be your presenter today. For those of you who are here, go ahead and let me know you can hear me by saying hello or by simply saying, Yes, I can hear you in the chat. That way, I know you guys can hear me because let's be real, it will be a little difficult for you guys to hear me for you guys to understand me if you cannot hear me. So go ahead and let me know that you guys can hear me. I'll give about, let's say, until that 1 minute mark for people to come in. And for those of you who are already here, I strongly encourage you get a ball pen, get a pen, and some paper and take down some notes. Notes will take you such a long way, and I encourage you to take notes so that when we're done, you will be able to rehearse and practice on your own. 'Cause practicing, if you do not practice all the stuff that you learn, it will be a little difficult to remember everything, right? The whole point of practicing is that we get better. So, for those of you, I encourage you get a pen, get some paper, take down some notes of some of the things that you find interesting or some of the things that you did not know that we will learn in this presentation. All right? So, obviously, today we will be talking about offering sympathy, right? Based on the title, that's what we'll be doing today. We'll talk about how to offer sympathy. We'll talk about the difference between sympathy and empathy, and we're also going to learn some very useful phrases and terms that we should and that we should not say when we are offering sympathy, right? Humans are made of emotions. So it's super important to be able to tell the difference between what we should say when people are feeling down versus what we should not say, right? We want to encourage people, we don't want to tear them down. So when it comes to offering sympathy, we must know what we should and shouldn't do. All right. So for today, we're going to go on for about a half hour. So I'm going to do my absolute best to get out of here at that half hour mark because I want to be mindful of your time. But I'm thankful for each of you guys coming into this presentation. I promise you will learn something. All right. So, today we're going to go on for about a half hour, like I mentioned. And if you have any questions, please save those till the end, and there will be a Q&A section there, all right? Now, you may be asking, Charles, what makes you qualified to talk about sympathy? Well, so I've been working on Tutlo for about a year, and I've actually been doing presentations since the beginning of January. And for me, I am very not emotional, but I am very able. I have a good skill of being able to tell when people get offended. So it's like discernment. I can tell the difference when someone's offended and someone's not. So therefore, I feel like I know what we should be doing and what we should not be doing when it talks about sympathy. All right. So let's get into this presentation, guys. Now that we've done our overview, let's get into what we will be learning today and all the stuff that is going to come from that. So obviously, since we're talking about offering sympathy, then ask us the question, what is sympathy? So sympathy is feeling of pity and sorrow to somebody else's misfortune. All right. So when somebody's in a bad situation and we feel bad for them, that is sympathy. All right. So that begs to answer the question, what makes you feel sympathy? I encourage you guys, use the chat when I ask you these kinds of questions. All right. So what makes you feel sympathy? Go ahead and let me know in the chat. For me, let's say, for example, if I see a homeless person, a homeless child, things like that, that makes me feel sympathy, right? Because I just feel so bad for the situation and I feel for them because when you do not have the privilege that we often take for granted in our day-to-day lives, it is very hard for them to live in just a normal day. So for you guys, what makes you feel sympathy? Is it seeing homeless people? Is it seeing orphans? Is it seeing animals get treated wrong? Is it seeing people get treated wrong? For you guys, go ahead. I encourage you. Let me know in the chat. What makes you feel sympathy? Go ahead, let me know. I don't see any answers, but I encourage you guys. Take your time, think about it. What makes you feel sympathy? All right. So now we're going to talk about something along the lines of sympathy, and that's sympathy versus empathy. All right. So while I give you guys time to answer your questions, I'm going to break down the difference between sympathy and empathy. All right. So sympathy is feeling bad for someone, while empathy is putting yourself in somebody else's situation. So that's the difference, right? When you feel bad for someone, you just feel bad for them. Like, oh, that is unfortunate, right? I feel bad for the situation. While empathy is you imagine what it's like to be in that person's situation, right? When we think, dang, this is harsh, having to feel that, and you imagine what that situation would be like, right? You sit there and you simply just think, what would it be like if I didn't have food? What would it be like if I didn't have water? And you put yourself in their shoes, and you have to deal with that. So that's the difference with sympathy and with empathy. All right. So a couple answers came in from what makes you feel sympathy. Somebody said homeless dogs for sure. Dogs are my personal favorite animal, and every time I see a homeless dog, it kind of makes me want to cry. Now, somebody else said child cry or seeing children cry. For sure. That breaks me down as well. Just seeing somebody so young having to cry because of their situation, that is obviously heartbreaking. Somebody also said injured animals, right? Seeing injured animals is not fun, right? Seeing anyone injured in general, humans or animals, always breaks my heart because that's not how we should be, right? We should be healthy and we should be able to live our lives to the fullest, right? So very good. Thank you guys for your answers. I appreciate that. All right, so let's get back to the topic we were just talking about, sympathy and empathy. When we have sympathy, it's the feeling bad for someone, and empathy is being able to put yourself in their situation or being able to imagine what it would be like if we were in their shoes. All right, so sympathy and empathy could also be broken down into this: head versus heart. When we talk about head, our head is related to our empathy. So our being able to put ourselves in their shoes is related to our head. While our heart is related to our sympathy, okay? You may be asking, all right, I don't understand. We'll just wait 1 second. But first off, let's read this quote by Einstein. If your head tells you something and your heart tells you another, before you decide first whether you have a better head or heart, right? Before you decide anything, first, you have to have you have to know which one is better. Is it my heart or is it my head, right? Like it says, if your head tells you something, but your heart tells you another, that means you have two different desires on a situation. Before you do anything, decide first whether you have a better head or heart. You have to decide which one is going to be smarter or which one is more ideal, I should say. So, therefore, let's go back to the head is our empathy and our heart is our sympathy, all right? So, your head your head functions as your empathy, all right? Your head does things like your thinking process, your analysis, your logistics, your pros and cons, and your imaginations, all right? So let's break these down one by one. So, first one, your thinking process. So your head obviously does your thinking, therefore it's related to empathy. Because it's related to empathy, you have your thinking, right? You put yourself in their shoes. You have to take down and think, all right, what would this situation be like if I was in their shoes? What would they have to deal with? What is the situation going to be like? And thinking relates to your head, right? So therefore, thinking relates to empathy, all right? And the next one is analysis and logistics. So analysis and logistics is when you process information and you analyze it, right? You think, all right, what are the pros to this? What are the cons to this, right? So therefore, your head is related to empathy because you're analyzing the information, right? For example, you see a homeless person on the street. Your thinking process would start with, okay, what would it be like if I was living on the street? then you analyze and have your logistics. I apologize, guys. I'm recovering from a cough. But back to what I was saying. Pros and cons list, right? After you analyze it, you're going to break it down to pros and cons, all right? What are the pros to being on the streets? Well, there's not many pros to being a homeless person and be living on the streets. While the cons, there's a lot of them, right? For example, if you were living on the streets, you'd have no fresh food, you wouldn't have water, wouldn't have a place to sleep, right? All right, so ask the question, what's pros and cons? All right, so pros means the good things. All right, so the good things about something are the pros, and the cons are the negative things or the bad things about it, right? I hope I answered your question, right? So if I'm saying pros and cons, when I say pros, it means the good things about situations, while cons just simply means the bad things about certain situations, all right? And obviously, once we break it all down, we talk about our imagination. So when we talk about our imagination, obviously we imagine certain situations, right? After we think about what it would be like, after we analyze, after we go through our pros and cons, we go through our imagination, right? We sit there and we think, all right, what would this be like? And you begin to imagine a situation where you didn't have food, you didn't have water, you didn't have a place to stay, and you have clothes, right? That's what it would be like being homeless, right? So your head, therefore, would relate to empathy, right? So remember that your head is empathy. It's your thinking process. You analyze and brings your logistics, and it brings your pros and cons, which is the good and the bad, and your imagination, right? When you begin to imagine what that situation would simply be like, all right? So let's remember that. Head is empathy, all right? And empathy is imagine or putting yourself in somebody else's shoes, while your heart relates to sympathy. So when your heart is where your intuition or your understanding is, right? Sympathy is when we feel bad for someone and we're kind of like, that is such a bad situation. That is what sympathy is, right? Your heart is where your intuition or your understanding is. And your heart also brings that next level of emotion, right? So when you're going through your day, you have your understanding, you get your emotions, that all comes from your heart, right? Your heart is, for example, when you see someone that you like, right? Wow, that person's amazing. Your heart is the one that controls those emotions. While for example, if you were to see somebody on the street and you see them and you feel sympathy for them, that all comes from your heart, right? Your intuition and understanding comes from your heart. That's the big difference between your heart and your head. Your head, it brings your empathy because it's more mathematical, it's more logistical, it's more logical, right? While your heart is simply just more emotional. So therefore, it's your sympathy. Your sympathy is just more emotional, while your heart your head is not about emotion. Your head is about processing information and processing it correct, right? So remember that your head, empathy, your heart, sympathy. What's the difference, right? We're gonna pound this until we remember it, guys. Your head is more mathematical, logistical, logical thinking, while your heart is emotional, right? That is the main difference between the two. So now let's get into some helpful vocab when we're talking about offering sympathy. All right, so we'll go through some vocabulary that are beneficial when we are offering our sympathy, and then we will talk about some vocabulary that is not helpful when we're offering our sympathy. All right, so phrase number one for our vocabulary terms. I'm sorry for your loss. You use this when somebody loses something or someone, right? For example, if you go to a funeral, right? Funerals are never fun because that means somebody passed away. So, therefore, our vocab in this section, when we talk about I'm sorry for your loss, you simply acknowledge that they lost someone and you offer your sympathy, right? You don't offer your empathy, you offer your sympathy when you say I'm sorry for your loss, okay? And obviously, you can also use it if somebody lost a job, if somebody lost a child, if somebody lost a car, or something like that. You would say, I'm simply sorry for your loss. And you offer your sympathies, right? You don't offer your empathies, you offer your sympathies, all right? Now, vocabulary phrase number two, don't let it get you down. Don't let it get you down is more of an encouragement, right? When you say don't let it get you down, you're encouraging that person that their situation is not permanent, right? Encouragement that a person's situation is not permanent. Therefore, we're going to say, hey, don't let it get you down. I know it sucks. I know it's hard, but don't let it get you down. There is a bright spot at the end of the road, right? It's more encouragement. You also offer your sympathies. You can't really offer your empathies in these situations. You only offer your sympathies, all right? So let's break it down. Remember, I'm sorry for your loss is used when somebody loses someone or something, right? A job, a car, a person. Those kinds of things. If somebody loses something, you offer your sympathies. I'm sorry for your loss. And then, if you say, don't let it get you down, you're encouraging someone that their situation is not permanent, all right? Now, two more phrases we're going to learn. First one, be good to yourself. That is simply a good, deep reminder that when someone is sad, to still take care of themselves. When somebody is sad, it's only going to get worse if they do not take care of themselves, right? If they shut down, if they do not eat their food, if they do not shower, if they do not take care of themselves, that is when the situation will get worse, right? So it's a reminder that when somebody is sad, that they should always still be taking care of themselves, all right? And then phrase number two or phrase number four is what a pity. When we say what a pity, we're simply saying that is such a bad situation. What a bad situation, right? What a pity that this person is like that, right? It's so sad. It's so bad that this person is in that situation, all right? So those are the four phrases we just discussed, right? I'm sorry for your loss. Be good to yourself. What a pity. And don't let it get you down, all right? Those are some good things that we can say when somebody is going down. Now, what do we not do when we have to deal with a situation when we're trying to offer our sympathies? First one, do not deny a person's emotions. Everybody is entitled to the emotions that they feel because obviously there is a situation when their emotions were aroused, right? For example, if somebody's father passed away, you're not gonna say, "Oh, don't feel sad." There's nothing to feel sad about. There's obviously something to be sad about, right? The person's father passed away, but we offer our sympathies and say, what do we say? We say it will get better, right? We will get better. Take care of yourself, right? We encourage the person. We offer our sympathies. We do not deny their emotions because that will only make it worse. We address their emotions and understand where they are coming from, all right? Now, number two, make sure you do not deny that his or her life can be affected by the situation, right? Let's use the exact same scenario that we just discussed. If a person's father passed away, we cannot deny that this person's life is going to be the same, right? Without a father or without a mother or without a very close family member, life is not going to be the same. So therefore, you can't act like that a person's life or your life is not going to change when somebody passes away. We have to acknowledge, again, it's so important, acknowledge a person's emotions, right? Acknowledge that because of this situation, this person may change, but you are there for them and you aren't going to encourage them, right? And the last one, do not ignore a person. Just because a person may be annoying, because a person may rub you wrong, do not ignore them. It obviously means they are going through a certain situation, especially if they all of a sudden change and their emotions become different. It means they are dealing with something. And it's simply our responsibility as a person's friend or a relative. Not ignore them. Talk to them. Address their emotions. Ask them, hey, how are you? What's wrong? And if they tell you, Be encouraging, right? Do not deny their emotions and do not say that their situation will not change. Because honestly, more than likely, their situation will probably change. All right. So before we end today's presentation, we're going to do a little activity where we're going to choose what should we say. All right. So there's a situation up on the screen that says a close friend's brother has died. What do we say? Do we say A, it's okay? Do we say B, don't worry about it? Or do we say C, I'm sorry for your loss? Go ahead, use the chat, fill in your answer. What do we use for this? All right, what phrase shall we use? Very good. Answers that came in. It's C, right? We say, I'm sorry for your loss. We offer our sympathies because that's such an awful situation, right? We don't say, oh, it's okay. He passed away. He died. There's not a big deal. And we don't say, don't worry about it because that's obviously something to worry about if somebody passes away, right? And then we obviously want to say, I'm sorry for your loss, because that means we're offering our sympathies and we're acknowledging them, right? Very good. Great job, everyone. All right. One more slide with two more situations. First one, your mom got sick. Do we say to your mother, it's no big deal that she got sick? Or do we say, I am here for you. I'm here to support you. I'm here to take care of you, mom. Which one do we do? A or B for situation number two? All right, go ahead. Fill in the chat in your answer. Are we going to say, it's no big deal that my mother is sick to her face? Or do we say, I'm here for you, mom. I will support you and I will do my best to take care of you? Very good, right? For number two, the answer is B. We are going to say, I am here for you, right? Our mothers always take, most of us get a mother that takes care of us when we are children, right? So obviously, we should do the same for them, all right? Number two, someone broke a leg. What do we say? You'll be fine. Or do you say, how can I help? All right. If somebody broke a leg, do we simply say, "Oh, you're okay. It's no big deal that you broke your leg," or do we say, "How can I help you?" Right? How can I be a help to you? Because honestly, if somebody does break their leg, it is very difficult for that person to be able to accomplish tasks. Right? Do we acknowledge their emotions and say, "How can we help?" or do we ignore them and say, "You'll be fine"? Very good. Great job, everyone. You're correct. How can I help? It's good to see that you all know what we should say and what we should not say in certain situations, all right? Before we wrap up, let's do a quick summary of some of the stuff we've talked about today, all right? We talked about sympathy, and the sympathy comes from the heart, and it's the feeling bad for someone, right? So when it comes from your heart, it's more emotional based than anything, right? And obviously, our emotions sometimes do run crazy, and we can't really control some of the emotions that we're feeling. So therefore, our sympathy coming from our heart is very, very important for certain people, all right? And now, empathy comes from your head, and that is where your logistical thinking is, right? And you put yourself in their shoes. You think logical, you think, what would the situation be like if I was in their shoes? That is what empathy is, right? It comes from our head, and it's our imagination. It's our logical thinking, right? It all comes from our head. That's the difference. Our heart is more emotional based, and our head is more mathematical and logical based. All right, and we also learned there are things you should and shouldn't say, which most of you guys already knew about, right? There are things we should talk about when somebody is feeling a certain way, and there are certain things we should just stay away from and not have to worry about, right? Okay, so we've wrapped up everything we've talked about, but if you guys want to practice on your own, go ahead and type into your search bar English lesson, Everyday English, lesson 19, offering sympathy flashcards. It will come up on Quizlet, and therefore you guys will be able to use this in order to practice on your own. Because, like I said, it's so important that we practice everything that we learn, or else everything that we learn will simply be useless, right? We want to be able to know and practice what we've learned. So I encourage you guys, search it in your search bar and practice some of the stuff that we have discussed, okay? So I'm gonna leave the chat up open to a Q&A. If you guys have any questions related to this topic or any questions in general that you'd like to ask, go ahead and ask those questions in the chat. And while people are thinking of their questions, I will throw up a couple polls, all right? These polls will simply ask you two questions. Question number one, was the webinar useful? So that means, did you learn something? Did you learn something that you did not know before? Is it something new to you? Is it something interesting, right? It helps us here at Tutlo understand where you guys are coming from, what your learning level is like, and simply was the information you were able to use today beneficial for you guys, all right? So I'll leave it up for about another 10 to 15 seconds, and then I will move on to poll number two, all right? So thank you guys for filling out that poll. Poll number two, all right? So poll number two asks you a different question, all right? So poll number two asks you this question. Do you want to participate in similar events in the future? It means, would you want to do other presentations? Would you want to participate in these presentations again, right? There's a bunch of you out there right now in this presentation. So I'm simply asking you, would you guys want to do these again with me as your presenter or with somebody else presenting, right? There are so many presentation topics throughout the week, so it's very easy for people to access, all right? So I'll leave this up for about another 10 seconds just to give people enough time to fill it out and for people to make sure that they were able to say what they wanted to say. All right, so thank you guys for filling out those polls for me. I appreciate it a lot. All right, so let's wrap up this presentation, guys. We'll finish a little bit early, but that's all right. So remember, follow Tutlo on Facebook, get involved with the LinkedIn, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You have no idea how beneficial and how simply important it is for people to be involved and for people to have those situations when they're simply just surrounded with people with similar goals with them, right? That's the whole point when you follow on a social media platform, right? You surround yourself with people learning just like you, and that gives you extra motivation and will actually have a lot of helpful learning tips for you guys to have in those social media platforms, right? Social media is everywhere. We almost all of us use it, and why not use it for the benefit of our English language and our English journey, right? So remember, follow Tutlo on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. All right. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much for coming in this presentation. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope I get to see you guys again, whether through that's a private lesson on the Tutlo platform or through another presentation in the future. All right. So everybody have a great rest of your week. Enjoy it. Have fun. And I hope to see you guys, like I said, again soon. Take care and goodbye.